Almost 3 years after the release of Cyberpunk 2077, its expansion, Phantom Liberty, got an unveiling during this year's Xbox Showcase. Trailers, gameplay, we got it all. Set to release on the 26th of September 2023, it's worth stressing Phantom Liberty is the only expansion plan for the game. More remarkable still, it's being developed just for current-gen PS5, Xbox Series X and S hardware this time, and PC of course. Or in other words, it leaves last-gen PS4 and Xbox One machines behind, building a new adventure just on higher-end machines. So the potential is huge. It also introduces a new area within Night City, a new district called Dogtown, and for this year's Xbox Showcase, we finally got to see it in action. In fact, we received high-quality gameplay footage of all versions, including PS5, Series X, and even PC, running through the exact same mission, all of which makes a detailed first look possible. So, how is Phantom Liberty shaping up comparing PS5 directly to Series X? Secondly, how drastically does PC pull ahead in its visuals over console by enabling its ray tracing overdrive mode? And lastly, what's the outlook on Phantom Liberty's frame rate on console, where PS5 and Series X appear to be running on their 60fps performance modes? Let's find out. In summary, this playthrough gives a perfect lead into Cyberpunk's new expansion. It's an early mission where V is given the simple task of saving President Myers from a wreckage. Down the chute we go, leading to Dogtown, where crime truly runs amok. This is described by CDPR as Night City's most dangerous region, and it really shows. The darkened streets are alive with car chases, debris set aflame, and surveying aircraft, and the night skies are filled with smoke. At the heart of the mission, though, is a building complex where we scale the scaffolds in a bid to find the President's crashed aircraft. Except every level brings a new wave of enemies. With each escalation upwards, CDPR's Red Engine gets better and better workouts on console and especially PC set to its path-traced RT Overdrive mode. Gunfights build to a frenzied climax around volumetric smoke, set against flares, lit fuselage, and the muzzle flashes from a new suite of weaponry. The volumetric effects here add a real depth to the scenery as we battle through. So what do we have in terms of the footage? Well, CDPR has been generous enough to offer up the exact same mission run at 4K resolution, the same slice of Phantom Liberty gameplay on 3 platforms. First, we have PlayStation 5, and given it's running at 60 frames per second, it does suggest we have the game served on its performance mode. Much like the core Cyberpunk package, this 60fps performance mode appears to use traditional rasterized techniques for lighting, ambient occlusion and shadows, and so no ray tracing in this mode specifically. Though that said, of course the main Cyberpunk adventure on console does have a separate RT mode at 30fps, which will hopefully translate to this expansion as well. Next along, there's Xbox Series X footage, which again serves up a 60fps experience, and again with the same visual setup as PS5. And lastly, we have a PC run which instead opts for visual quality over performance. It's the deluxe experience here, in essence running with the ray-traced overdrive setting enabled, a GPU-taxing path-traced solution where all settings are maxed out. For this slice of captured gameplay, the dark interior areas showcase the indirect lighting possible with path tracing beautifully. For example, the light bounce from the fire during the shootout realistically bleeds onto the nearby rubble, the girders, with the colour and the hue of those flames spilling onto nearby pockets of shade. The only catch being, the capture on PC is set to 30fps in this case. More to come on the visual side in this video, but it's a great way to show Phantom Liberty in the best case. To the comparisons, and first up, let's look at PS5 versus Xbox Series X. Alas, we have no Series S version to compare here, and so more on that with the final game. Resolution-wise, this updated Phantom Liberty build of Cyberpunk appears to tweak the setup a little compared to our last look at the game on patch 1.61. In the 60fps performance mode, for example, we now have a max resolution target of 1440p on PS5 and Series X, just as we look to the cranes overhead. Dynamic resolution scaling, DRS, stays in place too, and the lower bounds come in at 900p on both consoles, all reconstructed by FSR2 as before. Numbers in between are possible, of course, though typically this lower 900p reading kicks in during the first driving sequence, and as we'll get to later, this is probably the most taxing bit of the mission shown so far. There's more to come in terms of pixel testing in the final game around its September release. Otherwise though, clearly, there's nothing to split the two consoles visually. In image quality, the use of volumetric effects, in the draw distance up ahead, it's a direct match between PS5 and Series X, just as usual with Cyberpunk. Next up, we have a comparison with PC. Now here we have PC running on its RT Overdrive mode up against PS5 in example, though obviously PS5 has the advantage in this case of running at 60fps rather than the capped 30 on PC in this footage, and generally speaking, the console version holds up reasonably well overall, even if it's stripped of ray tracing features. Still, there are key points in this footage that showcase ray trace shadows, lighting and reflections on PC brilliantly. Kicking off with this slide down the chute, the interior of this cylinder is completely shaded on PC. The RT Overdrive mode realistically simulates a complete absence of light. That is, right until we near the end of the descent, where subtle gradients of light start streaking through the opening. By comparison, PS5 depends on a screen space method for ambient shading, which creates a brighter result all the way down the chute. It's obviously easier to see the action on PS5, but PC is capable of a more dramatic and realistic result overall here. Moving further through Dogtown, there are a few other great ray tracing moments. For one, just as we get into the car, this PC setup renders a richer blanket of shade beneath objects. The car in the middle of this shot and the construction machinery to the left, it's a gorgeously presented use of RT shadows that applies throughout the whole route. Later on, we even see puddles across the street pushing RT reflections. So if we stop and freeze frame again, note the crisper mirror image on the tarmac on PC compared to the more diffuse method on PS5. Both look superb though, honestly, and switching between the two, there's little to split them in terms of geometry LODs down the street. And so, again, it does fall on ray tracing to make the biggest impact on PC. Lastly, in delving deeper into the main building, it's also clear lighting benefits from PC's RT setting. In this case, overhead light beams create a radically different spread to shadows with ray tracing engaged here. Again, all of these are subtle tweaks in isolation, but combined, it does create a much truer to life picture, so long as you've the PC hardware to support it. All this to look forward to in Phantom Liberty then. And what's most clear is, regardless of your chosen platform, it's a great looking expansion, even on the 60fps performance mode on PS5 and Series X. As always with Cyberpunk though, the ray tracing features really sing with darkened interiors or rain-slicked streets, and that's precisely where CDPR takes this slice of gameplay. Before we get to performance, there's a bit of a bonus comparison first. Surprisingly, CDPR put out two versions of the same cinematic trailer alongside the gameplay footage. During the Xbox conference, for example, we had a 2.5 minute trailer running on a PC using what it describes as Xbox Series X equivalent settings, which is a mixture of medium and high essentially. And then, mysteriously, another trailer was uploaded to CDPR's own YouTube channel. It's the exact same edit, the same length, except with footage spliced in using a PC described as high-end. Now, the exact settings of this high-end PC are a mystery, but based on the comparisons between the two trailers, the CDPR one and the Xbox one, the exact settings of this high-end PC are a mystery, but based on the comparisons between the two, it certainly looks like CDPR's trailer on the high-end PC is again running on the RT Overdrive mode. Certainly we see indirect lighting, shadow rendering and reflections differ hugely while switching between them. It's an early sample to show how the settings scale on PC in the final release. A final note on frame rates then. Starting off with Xbox Series X, we've clearly got an ambition to run at the top 60fps line in its performance mode. The result? Well, from the mission exposition early on, right down to the firefights on the scaffolds, this build is currently jumping between 50 to 60fps overall. Now, in fairness, there's 3 months left to improve on what's here and optimize performance in the final build, so take this as an early snapshot of where development stands right now, and hopefully it will get a boost. I say this because the area in most need of improvement is this driving sequence, which is a direct beeline to the President's crash site. Here, this build locks at around the 50 FPS line on average, the fire effects, the car chases, the smog in the distance, all stacking up against Series X's bid for 60 FPS. And in battle, once we get inside the skyscraper, it's typically 60 FPS, but so often punctuated by drops into the 50s as we open fire. Again, it just needs tightening up. It's worth mentioning the game does have screen tearing, right at the top 10% of the display, as does PS5 in fact. It's not shown in the graph overlay here, though the tearing works in much the same way as the core Cyberpunk adventure on PS5 and Series X. Moving over to the PS5, again using the same B-roll footage provided by CDPR, it's a similar situation. The target, 60 frames per second. The result, often between 45 and 60 FPS in practice. In fact, PS5, in this early build, runs at a lower frame rate on average compared to what we've got on Series X's showing. In this early drive forward, for example, PS5 lurches to a constant low of 45 FPS, rather than the 50 FPS figure on Series X in the same moment. The complexity of the street, the flames, the AI cars moving at pace, all of it is a real workout for both machines. And as for the combat later on, there's also notable lurches under 60 FPS on PS5 as gun effects, the particles, the alpha transparencies, fire off from a huge armory of exotic guns. Potentially with a little more work, CDPR might clear the gap to a more consistent 60 FPS, but right now the state of the footage often reveals drops to the 50s. With all of this in mind then, we'll just have to see how the final game stacks up. I'm really hoping for an improvement when the time comes on September 26th, and we'll soon see if any real progress is made there. The Phantom Liberty expansion showing at the Xbox Showcase is a small sample, and an early one as well. Still, it gets across CDPR's direction for the expansion, one of an urban wasteland, smothered by pollution and street fires. One where the overcast skies make for a great showcase for PC's ray tracing tech, especially on Overdrive mode, while visuals on PS5 and Series X compare favourably, even running in their 60 FPS modes. The actual frame rates on each console need work though, of course, but with some adjustment, it might get to a tighter lock once the launch date rolls around. Beyond this, it's worth noting that CD Projekt Red's aim is to overhaul the original game alongside the release of Phantom Liberty, with improved vehicle combat, a new skill tree UI, plus overhauled AI for enemies. But the new Phantom Liberty adventure is the exciting bit. It's where CDPR potentially gets to press an advantage with focused PS5 and Series X development, and it's the area I'll be keen to look at come launch day. But that's all from me today. If you did find this first look useful or insightful in any way, feel free to like or subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell for instant notifications as any new video lands. To get a high quality version of this video, check out our Patreon at digitalfoundry.net, and to get in touch directly, just use Twitter. But from me for now, thanks for watching.